So the IGF-1 is like one of the main molecules that's involved with cancer and just unbridled growth of cells when that's elevated, especially beyond physiological levels to what you're going to try to do when you use exogenous IGF-1.
Hey, what's up, guys? On this episode of Muscle Mind, Scott and I start out talking about growth hormone and its relationship to IGF, plus a bunch more amazing GH factoids. After that, we talk about training through injuries. Then, will HIIT training have any health benefits over other forms of training, say volume training? And we have a listener with low hematocrit, low red blood, low hemoglobin, yet he's on a gamma test. So we try to tackle that one and a bunch more, guys. We're going to do that right now here on Muscle Minds. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Muscle Minds. I'm Scott McNally. Of course, I'm here with Dr. Scott STEVENSON. All of our programming is brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. And if you are watching this on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We have several podcasts coming out each week. We haven't had a Muscle Minds in a little while. Well, hey, listen, what do you have for us today? I know that we did get a couple questions that are popping up in the feed, but I see you've got some stuff here too. I've got some couple of figures and a Scott Stevenson original figure.
A couple of them. How good are the questions? Let me look at the questions.
Well, we have one from David, and he's asking about what is it related to cancer risk using IGF. Could it be lessened by using it alongside growth hormone, and that so that there's converted IGF BP3 in the system? I heard. Okay, this is what I've heard Dr. Serrano say.
Yeah,
he said that. And I've heard John Meadows say it as well, repeating Dr. Serrano. And then I heard Rhonda Patrick say something kind of similar, that IGF on its own may be able to create cancer. That's Rhonda Patrick's thought, is that IGF on its own may create cancer in an otherwise healthy person over long-term abuse, basically, when used by athletes. Now, what Serrano had said was that by using exogenous growth hormone, there's a series of checks and balances that occur so that the IGF isn't completely unfettered. That by combining, so if you were to use IGF to combine that with growth hormone, so that you do have like some of those checks and balances in place.
So what I think Rhonda and Dr. Serrano meant by regarding IGF-1 being unfettered is that you're prompting an endogenous IGF-1 release. So this is a somatomedin hypothesis. Growth hormone stimulates IGF-1 release from the liver, also at some local other tissues like bone and muscle to some degree, not in gigantic amount. There's some of that going on. And you've initiated that, and that's a hormonal cascade with a feedback loop built into it. So yeah, that will then inhibit, like, I don't know exactly the mechanisms. I can't point to what's going on, in the liver cells, for instance, but that increase in IGF-1 that would then feed back to the liver and keep further elevations of IGF-1 in check.
Okay.
Fettered. That's a great word. That's an awesome word.
They didn't use it. That was my word. That's a McNallyism. I like it too. It's a good word. So yeah, but that's totally the right deal, and that's what feedback inhibition is all about. Is to try to checks and balances on any of the aspects of the hormonal cascade or the hormonal axis getting out of check. So that's how that would work. But if you've got an exogenous source of IGF-1 coming in that's further amplifying IGF-1 elevation, then that doesn't apply anymore, because you're bringing IGF-1 in. It's kind of like using a growth hormone secretagogue versus using exogenous growth.
You're going to have downregulation of sensitivity to the secretagogue, the GHRP or what have you, whatever combination injectables or the MK677 you're using, and eventually that will to some degree balance out the amount of growth hormone release you get.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, when you use growth hormone to get an IGF-1 elevation, it's basically the same kind of thing. But if you've got IGF-1 coming in, here's an analogy. This will probably be like to make it all come together. So imagine if it would be like saying, I'm using some growth hormone peptides, and I want to elevate growth hormone. Will using growth hormone peptides to elevate growth hormone offset the adverse effects of using injectable growth hormone? Like no, you put in 10 IUs, 10 IUs goes in. You put in 20 IUs, 30 IUs, you could hypothetically put in 1,000 IUs of growth hormone.
Whew, yeah.
There's no feedback. It's just coming in, it's there. It'll be broken down and taken away in the ways that it will be. So no, but what you would possibly do by adding growth hormone on top of IGF-1 is compound your cancer risk from those cancers that are growth hormone sensitive or affected by growth hormone levels.
Okay.
So, I mean, IGF-1 is like, there's numerous cancers whereby the cancer cells have become, cancer cells are immortal. That's the problem. So normally cells will undergo mitosis. You get 2 from 1 and more, but some of them die.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the cell regulates itself in the tissue so that the tissue doesn't just grow into a big tumor. It maintains the tissue shape and function, physiology, and form, so that it does what it's supposed to do. So that you have a lip, not a big, lip tissue on your lip, or the tissues that make up your lip, not a big tumor.
Yeah.
But if those cells become cancerous, one of the ways that can happen is that they start or one of the things that's involved with that can be overexpression of IGF-1.
Mm-hmm.
So that just keeps on bringing about growth in those cells and triggering new growth, and mitosis. So the IGF-1 is like one of the main molecules that's involved with cancer and just unbridled growth of cells when that's elevated, especially beyond physiological levels, to what you're going to try to do when you use exogenous IGF-1.
Mm-hmm. So
that's like, that probably, I can't, I would not be surprised if that's involved with, 85% or 80 plus. The vast majority of cancers probably have some IGF-1 sensitivity. I've looked this up before. Growth hormone, there are some, I can't remember which ones they are, but there are some that specifically have been connected to growth hormone in particular.
Okay.
So, and here's the thing, like one of the things that, we know, like if you, and this is a Rhonda Patrick thing too, if you fasting tends to reduce IGF-1.
Yeah.
It's not anabolic, it's catabolic.
Yeah.
And fasting also increases life expectancy. So there's all sorts of, like, we could go on and on with this sort of interplay between those things that bodybuilders do to promote growth and grow and overeat and have lots of IGF-1 versus what people who limit their caloric intake do, and what that means in terms of all sorts of health risks and all sorts of health parameters. And IGF-1 is one of a centerpiece molecule that differentiates the off season, push the food, get as big as you can, inject IGF-1 type of thing, versus what happens to IGF-1 while you're dieting down. So, but yeah, I mean, the cancer thing, like that's such a generic, and it's an important question, obviously. If someone has a family history of cancer, I would try to go and figure out what cancer their family members have had, and then see if they can get a genetic. And I don't know which one would be the best one at this point in time, but get a genetic test, run it through Promethease or run it through a single nucleotide polymorphism checker that'll look for the specific gene polymorphisms variants that predispose people to different cancers.
Yeah.
And you can get your own profile, like you can get some idea of your disposition. So that way, I mean, not that it will necessarily be, it's not going to be 100% accurate. And actually there are papers that have looked at this, and I read a blog somewhere where it's really quite funny. Someone went and had their it was just a heritage testing type of genome analysis, but it told them just dramatically different things of, what their genetic heritage was. And you can get false positives for single nucleotide polymorphisms on those tests that are geared towards that to try to give you sort of a health risk inventory. And some of the commercially available tests are not very good. And someone wants, they can message me. I'll send them a paper. It's been 2 or 3 years now. But so you can't even trust in those entirely.
Yeah.
But if you do one of those and you're like, okay, shit, I got 8 high risk genes for cancers that are IGF-1 and or growth hormone, which was also going to involve IGF-1, because elevated growth hormone is going to mean elevated IGF-1, all other things being equal.
Yeah.
It's like, I probably shouldn't be playing around with IGF-1.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that goes up when you overeat. That goes up when the more you eat. It's a really powerful marker of nutritional status.
Yeah.
People who are starving, like burn victims who are really catabolic, IGF-1 goes in the tank. So that's just as an aside, people talk about, growth hormone means more growth hormone means higher IGF-1. And that's how a lot of people will test their exogenous growth. But when you diet, IGF-1 goes down.
Okay.
What do you think happens to growth hormone when you diet? If you're not injecting it?
Well, we had a related question here. It says this is from let's see.
Answer a question with a question.
Gillard Ron. He says, doesn't fasting increase GH secretion? From his understanding, many proponents of fasting claim that it does.
It does. That's its major metabolic. One of its major metabolic roles during post development, after the bones are fused and it's not promoting growth. That's why you'll see some sort of strange skeletal abnormalities sometimes on people who use lots of growth hormone. Their feet will get larger and facial changes, but no one's getting taller.
Right.
Some of that's explained by the amounts and the fact that the growth plates are already fused.
But didn't that relate? Didn't you say in relationship to not eating? Was it?
Well, that's where I'm going.
Okay, I see.
So after all that's done, after the growth and development's done, you're a fully formed adult, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
And growth hormone's not directing, skeletal maturation of your bones. It's there as a fuel selector hormone. It goes up when you exercise. It goes up when you sleep, especially if you don't eat very much. And it's going up so that it will liberate fatty acids to be used as fuel so that you have glucose for your brain. So when you fast, when you don't eat, growth hormone goes up. When you're hypocaloric, growth hormone levels will elevate roughly in relative to the caloric balance that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's a lack of carbohydrate, you'll have more growth hormone release. Those two things are interrelated. So, you won't get the growth hormone elevation if you have carbs or even protein, because insulin release will antagonize the growth hormone. But so, yeah, that's what growth hormone is really doing. So that's the thing, is that it's just it's causing lipolysis, liberating the free fatty acids. Those can be oxidized during exercise and those other conditions I just mentioned. So, but IGF-1 will be low when you're starving too. So you diet, your IGF-1 goes down. And that was the way in the past, if people wanted to get a prescription for growth hormone, you just go get your blood test done when you're dieted down and you're starving. And your IGF-1 will be really low. And it'll be out of range because your diet's out of range because you're so calorically restricted. And it's not because your growth hormone is low. Your growth hormone will be high. But you don't want. See, here's the interesting thing, and this is why it's so cool how the body's programming for what these genes can be doing, what these molecules be doing. When you're growing as a kid, and you have growth hormone causing IGF-1 secretion systemically, that's because you're growing, you're eating, you're growing, you're becoming a much larger human. You grow at the rate when you're a kid, and you're an infant in childhood, much faster than you will, unless maybe it's like your first cycle as a bodybuilder. That growth rate is just stupendous.
Yeah.
It's badass. Well, that makes sense then that growth hormone will be also directing IGF-1 because IGF-1 is very anabolic and it directs growth of tissues. So what you want is you're getting to be going from a little Scott to a big Scott, right? But when you're starving and you're already as big as you're going to be, you're already an adult, that part of your growth and development's over with. You're entering the stage of adulthood and thereafter. You don't, and growth hormone then takes on a role of fuel provision.
Huh.
So it makes sure you've got fatty acids available so that you don't run out of glucose because your brain would prefer to have that to some degree.
I see.
Yeah. So then at that point in time, when you're starving, you don't want to be turning on IGF-1. That's like putting on the brakes while you're pressing on the accelerator.
Okay.
That's like, no, that's like, those are, you don't want that. So that doesn't happen. And there are mechanisms in place to ensure that now that Somatin-Meaden hypothesis is a disconnect now between growth hormone stimulating IGF-1.
Okay.
It's different. And it's so there's a specific connection between those two hormones that is dependent upon the growth and development of the organism.
Huh. Okay.
Go figure, right?
Yeah.
So that's what people don't get when they say, well, I went in, I got bunked growth hormone, I injected the 10 IUs, and I measured 2.5 hours later, I followed the damn protocol, my IGF-1 sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm dieting for a show, damn it, and I'm grouchy, and I want my good growth hormone. It's like, it doesn't mean you don't have bad growth hormone. It just means you had a shitty IGF-1 release, which is reflective of your diet, not the growth hormone you injected.
Holy shit! No kidding.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad this was because I see this constantly as something that people say. You can obviously just do a growth hormone test. That's a much better way to do it.
Yeah.
And those IGF-1 tests, all other things being equal, for someone who's kind of perma-bulking or just not, if they standardize the dietary condition and that your weight is stable, then that will be reflective of the growth hormone to some degree.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I don't even know. It's very possible because there are different growth hormone receptors.
Okay.
That's one reason why some people may or may not be receptive.
Yeah.
Just different isoforms there. So that also the genes there also the gene for the growth hormone binding protein too. So that's part of this whole play. But what happens after growth hormone binds to its receptor? I got one of those.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
I was supposed to go there this year, or last year. Yeah, this year, still this year.
We were supposed to. What was that talk Ken was going to have us do? The sort of insights, successful insight type of thing. We're still going to do it, I think. Yeah, you were going to.
I was going to talk about podcasting.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully, it still happens.
Yeah, I have a couple of those now. He gives great gifts, man.
Yeah, this is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, they held up well.
If you guys haven't heard of it, you should go to Swiss. Scott will have a code, I'm sure. When it comes, I'll have a code.
They have codes? Okay.
Yeah, there'll be codes like early entrance codes, right. But it's a group of people like Scott. All of the Scotts get together in North America and other places, and go to Canada.
Muscle Brainards.
Muscle Brainards, yes.
So, but anyway, the growth hormone, obviously, hormones have different effects depending on the tissues.
Okay.
And different growth hormone. You see all these. This is just more. We're getting on a growth hormone topic here, but
that's interesting though. That's good. I like this.
Yeah. So obviously, people find when they use black market growth hormone versus farm grade growth, even different pharmaceutical preparations of growth hormone.
Yeah.
There's some variations there. Some of that's manufacturing. There's a whole slew of things that could explain that, but some of it means then that you may have a different growth hormone molecule. It's a different shape, let's say, due to oxidation, methylation, various things that just change the shape of the key going into the lock, key being the growth hormone, the lock being the growth hormone receptor. And when that happens on one tissue, you would get lipolysis if it's a fat tissue. If it's skeletal muscle, there's something going on there doesn't seem to be greatly anabolic. If it's bone, it's going to have a different effect, obviously. And so what happens after you put the key in the lock, those post-binding messenger systems differ depending on the cell. Mm-hmm. And it's also going to depend on what happens in the cell, depends on the growth hormone itself. Mm-hmm. Some growth hormone works better than others. That may be how well it binds to how well it binds to the receptor. Mm-hmm. So the analogy that everyone knows about is there are lots of different drugs that all bind to the same receptor and have the same action supposedly, but the drugs work differently. Albuterol and clenbuterol.
Yeah.
Those are different, both binding to the beta receptors, different relative affinity. Affinity is just like how well it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also like when you put that in there, it's like this super like wizard's key.
Okay.
You know, it's not like you turn like that, but you put it in and then it takes you in, and then all the tumblers start sliding, and then it flips it around, and like there's all this incredible molecular binding that goes on that changes the shape of the growth hormone receptor on the inside, and then that facilitates all the things that happen inside the cell.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on what kind of key you have, that's going to impact what happens in those cells. So it may be that, you know, you get one growth hormone. This is where I'm going with this. One type of growth hormone that just doesn't do much as far as IGF-1 release.
Okay.
Because the nature of that interaction at the liver.
Mm-hmm.
But it may do a fine job at promoting lipolysis in the adipose cells, in the fat cells.
Huh. Okay. Yeah.
And so it's not like another thing someone could do is, well, how well does my growth hormone, how well does it work for fat loss?
Yeah.
So you'd go in and you'd get a baseline level of free fatty acids.
Huh.
Was what you'd have to probably do. Inject your 10 IUs and then monitor that. So what's the elevation of free fatty acids?
Yeah.
There's some, things you'd have to be in a lab to do to look at oxidation and that kind of stuff. But you get some sort of marker of lipolysis.
That would be interesting to see.
That's really what most people are wanting from growth hormone. Although some people seem like they feel like they grow from it too, which might be IGF-1 mediated.
I like the recovery personally. I feel like I recover better.
Connective tissue. It has effects on connective tissue. So that's mainly where its protein synthetic effects come into play.
Okay.
Not so much in muscle tissue.
Okay.
So, but that can vary as well, person by person. Some people don't get that from growth hormone. Some people do.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be that'd be a hard one to like. You can't. There aren't a whole lot of studies that have measured like connective tissue protein synthesis because you have to. At least the old technology was you had to biopsy a sample of that. So like take a little sliver from your patellar tendon, something like that. So you can do it with a radioisotope tracer of some sort and see how much of amino acids get incorporated into connective tissue. But again, that, this is high-end lab shit. But
yeah, you're not doing that at Quest.
Yeah. You don't exactly know. No, you're lucky to get a good attitude and a happy, friendly face. That's all I'm hoping for, is not to be with the grouch.
Right.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's one of the things. So that, like, you can see, like, so not only is that IGF-1 not necessarily telling you how good the growth hormone is, it's not IGF-1 elevation for people who are using growth hormone for fat loss isn't even necessarily specifically reflecting growth hormone's effect on the fat cells.
Okay.
It's showing you its effect on the liver and IGF-1, which is just kind of a moot point if you're dieting down because you're not going to expect an effect.
Yeah.
Maybe like if you inject massive amounts, it's super physiological, so you're going to override the system.
Okay. It's
not meant to work within those parameters. Those aren't the normal design parameters, to have 10 IUs coming in all at one time.
Right.
That's a lot. It's like 5 times daily output or something like that. So you will get an IGF-1 release from that. But it's still going to be, in my experience, somewhat dampened when someone's dieting.
Huh.
So that's the thing. It's, measure growth hormone is a better way to sort of evaluate. And then there's also issues with the testing that happens there. So that's, a growth hormone molecule might not show up so well given a radioimmunoassay that tests for growth hormone, because what it would have is a binding protein that binds to some part of the growth hormone.
Okay.
And the extent to which that radioactive binding protein, the tracer isotope, binds tells you, well, how much is bound to growth hormone tells you how much growth hormone was there.
Okay.
Tells you how much growth hormone you had and what the elevation was. But sometimes the binding's not perfect. So it's not going to be like you're getting every single growth hormone molecule, and that the binding of that molecules for the test may not reflect how well the growth hormone binds to your receptors.
Oh, okay, yeah, I could see that.
So you might have shitty binding with the binding protein of the test and shitty binding on your growth hormone receptor, or good on both ends, or any combination thereof. So, but that's why you have to be consistent. Like when people change labs,
Mm-hmm.
that can be a huge thing for like stuff like the free antigens. Like there's two kind of tests done for free testosterone,
Okay.
and they will show like a 5 or 8. Like it's like a 5-fold difference plus
Hmm.
in terms of the percent free or the values.
Hmm.
So, but it depends on which test they do.
Hmm.
And so that that there tells you that the test is just giving you some normative numbers based on this test. It's kind of like every time we go and we count the cows in that field, we're going to use this. Bob's going to do it, and Bob lost an eye in the war, and his other eye he's a little nearsighted on. So he can get a good call. You know, like if it's truly 100, he's going to guess between like 80 and 120.
Yeah.
Or Bob always tends to be a little low. So like as long as we have Bob do it every time, if we're getting about 80% of the actual value.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then if you go and you get, you know, Bob's great grandfather Bill, who's been blind for 20 years, he's gonna have he's always gonna be low because he can't hear either. So he thinks there's 20 cows and there's 100.
Yeah.
I'm reading this facetious scenario, but you get the idea.
Uh-huh.
So neither of those numbers are particularly accurate.
Okay.
But what's important is the change in the values, or that you always go with Bob or Bob's great-great-grandfather.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bob, or we're just going to hire someone new. But
well, I don't even know, like in the case of the free testosterone, which number is the accurate one, because we don't have an eagle eye GPS, you know, that counts, or someone with a clicker that actually tells us the exact number.
Okay.
There may be lab techniques that I'm unaware of that are known or thought to be more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that both of those are used and still used, you know, somewhat regularity, so what is it? Like there's all sorts of potential ways in which error can creep into those measurements. Mm. So we don't know what the real value is. We're just presuming, but it's like a 5-fold difference. I'll have to go and look. I can post some of that information too for people.
Okay.
But it can confuse people because they're like, oh shit, you know, I tried boron or something like that to free up more tests, and it went the other way. It's like, what the hell? This is bullshit. It's like, well, what did you? Well, I had to go get tested at, you know, at Quest instead of LabCorp. It's like, well, how do they test for free testosterone? It's like, I have no idea. It's like, well, go check into it. I bet they use this test versus this test. So you actually only went down by 50%, whereas the test is typically much more than that, much lower than that. So maybe you did get an increase, but I wouldn't count on it because you asked Bob and then you asked his great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
Who knows? So. Yeah. Anyway, so I think that's enough growth hormone IGF to cover that question.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for watching another podcast here at Think Big Bodybuilding Media. And thank you to our great sponsor, TrueNutrition.com, for making this all possible. TrueNutrition.com is owned by Dante Trudell, the creator of DC Training. He wanted to create a supplement company that offered high-quality, third-party tested supplements at a fair price. High-quality protein powders, just about every type you could think of. Huge variety of flavors, plus health and performance supplements. Check them out, TrueNutrition.com. And hey, if you use our code ADVICES, you directly support our podcasting. Thanks, guys. Let's get back to the program. Can I ask you this question here? This is from Michael, and I'd just be curious to hear what your input is on it. He says, just a simple question of what are some good exercises when you have a back/spine injury?
I would go to my keyboard and Google chiropractor injury special, back injury special. I would find a doctor and figure out what's going on. Get into not necessarily a chiropractor. Go to your general practitioner. Figure out what's going on with your back.
Okay.
First. So did the question pop up? I want to make sure I cover all the.
Yeah, that was the whole question.
Okay. So you just want to know exercises when he has a back pain, basically.
I mean, yeah, I guess that would make the most sense is figure out exactly what's going on with the injury first.
Yeah, because there's so many things. It could be facet joint pain, which is local. You know, it could be a bulge disc and the spasming around the disc, and you're not getting any radiating because you're not impinging a nerve yet.
Yeah.
It could be a muscle spasm. You know, it could be so many different. It could be even some referred pain. Where you got an injury somewhere else and it just feels you have pain in another location.
Yeah.
That happens a lot of times. You know, there's some known association between pain in one place and an actual injury or something going on in another place.
Yeah.
But you gotta figure out what it is first of all.
You know what I've found for myself, and then I've seen a lot of people who I can almost call it now on certain people that, so I hurt my back, years ago, and then I continued to re-injure it for a long, long time. And I got MRIs. Thankfully, there was nothing wrong with the discs. Everything structurally was okay. And I found that for me, it was a muscular imbalance. And, I probably have talked about it with you before when I started the glute training. My whole thought was aesthetics. Right. I was like, oh, yeah, I don't have good glutes. They just never really turned on well. Some people are like, remember when we were, and you've heard other people say this, when we did the Live Advices radio event at the Arnold 2 years ago, and Josh Wade was there. And Josh was like, I just squat and my glutes grow. He was like, I just suggest just squatting. It's like, but I did that obviously for years, and I still had, the white guy butt syndrome. Directly training my glutes and then talking with people and then experimenting, I realized that my low back was compensating for glutes not turning on. So I'd bend over to do a T-bar row, and my low back would hold as damn tight as it could. And let me tell you too, my erectors were thick. And I think they were so thick because they were compensating for glutes that weren't working. But eventually in that bent over position with 3.5 plates, there's going to be a moment that they strain. And then I'm out for 3 weeks, waiting for my back to recover. Strengthening my glutes was a huge factor. And now I'm seeing in other people that tell me they have low back pain, and that clients of mine, and then I look at their physiques and I'm like, yeah, and you have no glutes either. And sometimes it's these mysterious low back pains can be fixed in cases like that,
Yeah. I mean, and what you're talking about, the other etiology of having atrophy glutes can also come about too, in that the person has low back pain and then they stop doing things where they bend over and would engage the glutes, and the glutes get small.
Yeah. Yeah.
For that reason. So they're basically favoring, the back injury, and you do this stuff inadvertently all the time.
Yeah.
You just get used to not bending over in certain ways and not squatting down, and eventually you get atrophy in that muscle. It can happen pretty rapidly sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because you just don't the day-to-day, let's say you bend over 150 times during a day, just picking up various things, or the glutes get activated or walking, but then that goes from 150 to nothing.
Right.
And then you go down a dastardly spiral where, then you stop moving less because your glutes get weaker. You stop engaging them less. The low back takes over more, and then you end up with another injury.
Yeah.
But did you ever figure out if there is any mechanical injury to your low back?
Mechanical. What do you mean by mechanical? Like
a disc?
No, no. I've had MRIs.
Never got
in
a
the
diagnosis
past.
for the reason for the pain. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've never had. I couldn't find a reason. Now I haven't had an MRI in years, so who knows? I may have done something since the last MRI. But that said, strengthening the glutes, I'm able to handle way more than I was before, and I don't have those phantom moments where the back just goes out on me.
Yeah. Well, you'll be able to engage the musculature more correctly, so to speak, from a biomechanical standpoint across the posterior chain.
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah. Literally, you've got all these pieces of the posterior chain puzzle, and you've got a weak link in the glutes. Well, that means the other links have to take up the slack, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. That's where. So you're going to focus injury risk, even if it's just minor tweaks. Nothing that's going to show up with an MRI, or nothing that will be around. You go in a month later and they do a straight leg test or something like that, on you, and nothing's going to show up because you're fine. You just tweak some things. Maybe just muscular strains. Yeah. Because you're putting so much there. A lot of people have really, really, really tight hamstrings.
Yes. Yes.
And the hamstring that in that case, it disallows them. It pulls them into a posterior pelvic tilt.
Okay.
And disallows so if you think of your pelvis as being kind of triangle like this, the hamstrings being back here, it pulls everything back. Well, that will tend to bow your low back.
Okay.
As opposed to having that nice anatomical lumbar arch that you have when you're just standing there.
Uh-huh.
There's some lumbar curvature that's just the normal lumbar curvature, which is somewhere where you want to be most of the time, because that's where the discs and the vertebrae are stacked up on one another, the best for overall cushioning of the spine.
Yeah.
And if your hamstrings are tight, basically that pushes you into that position that makes you cringe when someone's doing a deadlift or a squat and their back starts to bow the wrong. It's like, motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can blow a disc. The posterior wall of the discs is weaker than the anterior, and it also doesn't have the ligamentous support there. So there's some mechanical reasons why we tend to blow discs in the way we do that press on our vertebrae. Partly like you just can't have all that support structure back there because that's where the nerves exit to come back in. So you gotta have some openings, and the fact that you have openings, it's kind of like if you're gonna bring in like the satellite cable from the roof, you got to make a hole in the roof to get it through. Yeah. That's where you're going to tend to get water coming through the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Other things being equal. So that's where you're going to tend to get an injury, just because that's just part of the anatomical design. Plus evolutionarily, we've not only been bipedal for a relatively short period of time. We're not really built to be walking upright entirely.
Okay.
We're pretty good at, we're doing all right, but like putting, 500 pounds on our backs, like that's not what, we've been doing for eons.
Yeah.
Because being upright is just a relatively new. Look at the other primates. They can walk upright, but they're not that far from us genetically speaking, or even didn't branch that long ago evolutionarily, but they're not walking upright.
Yeah.
They're dragging stuff now and again, but they're not squatting like we try to.
Yeah.
So, but definitely back to his question, just go get it checked, see if you can figure out what's going on there. So you don't try to do some rehab or something that exacerbates it and makes it worse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a crazy thing. I'll just like, this is sort of a little bit of mini rant or an offshoot, but some people, they'll say like, what do you guys do for elbow tendonitis? Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, go to a doctor. And why would I say that? Because if someone says they have tendonitis in their elbow, that's like you're saying you have a headache in your foot. Because your elbow's a joint.
Okay.
You would have elbow arthritis.
Okay.
Not tendonitis.
Yeah.
Means you have inflammation of one of the tendons in the area of the elbow.
Right.
It could be tennis elbow or golfer's elbow or triceps tendonitis or some other things as well. But when you say elbow tendonitis, like literally that shows that you don't have like a basic, and this isn't like, I'm not pissing on anybody, but it's because everyone says it that way.
Yeah.
Like that's the common way to say it, but it's like, that tells you nothing, because that could literally be golfers, like those things I just mentioned, all of which could be treated generically with, anti-inflammatories, or just throw something, throw like Quan Long oil on it, which I'll touch on in just a second, because that came up on a board just recently, and just try to get through it, and that happens, that'll work. But if it's a chronic thing that keeps on coming back, and you found a good fix for yours, like you've engineered your way out of that injury risk just by being very, very cognizant of all the things that were going on.
Absolutely.
And that's brilliant. But if you're not really sure, like you can't get a handle on it, try to figure out what it is, because the back is so many different things. So, if you try, like I'm taking glucosamine and aspirin and, I'm wrapping it, all this kind of stuff, and I still have elbow tendonitis. It's like you're not even like saying like it's right here on the tip of my elbow, or there's no specificity and understanding of what's going on, so you're not going to be able to treat with any specificity.
Yeah.
It's like my car won't start. It's like, okay, well, throw some gas in there, throw some oil in there to start. Okay, good, you're good to go. Car won't start. I did all those things. Like, okay, now you're gonna have to go to a mechanic.
Yeah.
Because they'll diagnose what's going on. So someone asked. And I tried to be as nice as I could with this, because I just wanted to help this person. So the question was, can someone point me in the right direction of the best, most reliable brands of Quan Long oil?
Yeah.
And Quan Long oil that it's in my book. It's a topical liniment.
I was told the advice I was given was look for the box that looks like it's just Chinese writing. It's probably going to be a good one.
Right. Well, here's pretty much. But here's the thing. there's only one brand, there's only one manufacturer as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like that's all there is. There's Prince of Peace makes it, and you'll see like some variations in like small ones in the box. And at one point, sometimes they can't have I'm blanking on one of the ingredients can't be in there because it's toxic.
Oh,
but
okay.
other than that, like it's like what will be the best make if I wanted to get a Ford F-150, where should I what make vehicle should I get? It's like there's only one Ford, like it's the Ford F-150. There's no knockoffs,
Yeah.
which should be a possibility. And you're right, you Google it and it comes up all sorts of places, and it is in a foreign language, so that makes you like, okay, I don't know which one's which. So maybe they're faking, but it's only just one.
Huh. Okay.
But there's only one brand. But the thing with Quan Long oil is like it's a liquid Band-Aid to some degree, and I say Band-Aid in that has anti-inflammatory processes that can help you get past some inflammation that's been brought about from a chronic overuse injury.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only a smart idea in my mind if you're also treating the underlying root of the issue.
Absolutely.
So that's the branch.
Yeah.
That
goes with everything, right? I mean, when I looked into stem cell therapy, they were saying that the big thing is they want you to. Adam Lamb was telling me they want you to take like 3 months off of training, basically, and then from there getting back into it really easy. And then everything I read was, so if you had an instability in a given joint, if the structure wasn't working properly, and then you fix the connective tissue, if the structure still isn't working properly, you're just going to do the same thing and make it worse again,
Yeah. I think with stem cells too, you have to give them some time to set up shop and replace the tissue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but you keep grinding it back down, if you had an issue, just like if you were to use the oil on a low back or say a knee pain. There was days, I'm sure all of us are probably guilty of this, where if your knees hurt, you just wrapped them tighter.
That was Ken Hill used to say that. That was one of his
yeah, I thought he said that recently, actually.
Yeah.
But that's what I've done. I don't have any knee problems now, but I never wrap my knees either.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of things there. So like that's a matter. The stem cells is a matter of understanding how the procedure works. It's like you plant a seed and you can't just expect for the plant to have grown the next day. It's like planting the seed is going to give you the plant 3 months from now, from which you can harvest the tomatoes or whatever. So putting the stem cells in, but it's only going to happen if you stay off the ground. If you go in there and you're stomping on the ground all the time, you're stomping on the seedling when it's trying to come up. You're never going to let it become what the intention is. So that's knowing the underlying strategy that you're using. And wrapping the knees is just saying, fuck it, I don't care why it hurts. I'm going to make it not hurt because I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing.
Right.
Sometimes you blast those, like in prep, sometimes you just have to just fucking go. Like there's a trade-off. Obviously this isn't the healthiest thing to be doing all the things I'm doing to try to look the way I want to look.
Right.
So you just keep on. But like with the Quan Long oil, there's a specific thing also in that it contains, wintergreen is probably the source, methyl salicylate, which is methyl salicylic acid, which is just like acetyl salicylic acid, which is aspirin, which is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, which blocks the cyclooxygenase enzyme and blunts inflammation.
Huh, okay.
So when you blunt inflammation is part of directing the turnover of the tissue that you want when tissue gets broken down and then comes back stronger.
Okay.
So you can actually, and this has been demonstrated like in some of the muscle damage studies with NSAIDs, and like there's one particular study with a rabbit, for instance, where they damaged the muscle and they treated it with NSAIDs. And they blunted the damage that was done and the loss of force that was done caused by that damaging injury protocol. But then when they looked at the tensile strength of the muscle months later, it was reduced.
Okay, yeah.
Because you're blunting the inflammatory response. You're also blunting the remodeling. So if you've got tendon, let's say, whichever one it might be, around your elbow, your knee, or what have you, and it's starting to get inflamed because it's not holding up well against the tensions that you're exposing it to. And it's starting to fray and tear, and this tendinitis is starting to move towards a tendinosis, which is the next thing, and the next thing would be possibly a tear. And you're basically masking that pain with an anti-inflammatory. You're preventing the inflammation to prevent the pain. You're also preventing the normal tissue regeneration that comes about from the loading that makes it stronger. Just in the same way that NSAIDs could potentially, depending on how much you use and how hard you train, it could potentially blunt your training.
Yeah.
Stimulus. So someone who doesn't know, like, where in their elbow it hurts, they just slap some this going to make it feel great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll be able to push through it, but you keep doing that, and you're also going to be blocking the ultimate recovery that you want, so you can get out of the hole of your injury and not have to use Quantum Long oil down the road. So that's an important thing. People, that's in my book. I noted that in my book. That's a product you can get. I have an Amazon store. Actually, I have something else to announce too.
Yeah, what's that?
I have an Amazon store.
Yeah?
Yeah, I got some products that I mentioned in my book.
Oh, nice. That's perfect.
Yeah, so for people, it's on my Instagram profile, so you can go there. And I haven't gotten any money or any notifications, anyone's bought anything, but I've got those all kind of collected there.
Okay.
As, like, you know, Scott approved stuff.
That's a great idea. I have that stuff loosely, but I don't have it collected anywhere. Just when people ask or something makes sense, I'll put it in the show notes or something. But yeah. Oh,
I have a huge spreadsheet I used to give to clients, like, you know, like tons of products, like copy paste. Yeah, it's a monster.
That makes sense then that you would put something like this together. Good.
You could do. I think you could do it. I don't know. Like I think I used. So my credential for doing that was my Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I had to put my Instagram in to show that I'm, you know, somewhat notariable.
You mean to create an affiliate?
Yeah, exactly. There had to be some amount of notoriety there that.
I mean, I already have an affiliate. I do have an affiliate account with them.
Oh, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
That's so.
Let's see if we have anything else here. There was a question about health and training from our good friend Juan down in Mexico. So he initially said, do you have some thoughts on high intensity training and health? And then I asked him if he could be more specific. And he said,
thank you.
He said, sure. He says, muscle, it's endocrine organ. And keep in mind, English is not his first language. Do you think if we train by high intensity fashion that it would help people with metabolic disease like type 2 diabetes?
Oh, absolutely.
Would it help any more to train high intensity versus another style?
Like high intensity resistance training?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? I think because he's kind of an HIT guy.
Yeah.
Kind of two aspects of that come to mind. So if you're talking about type 2 diabetes, the main thing that exercise is going to help remedy there, there are a couple things that are going to happen. It's going to help remedy the insulin sensitivity right off the bat. And if you continue to train and you start changing your body composition and reduce your body fat, that's going to help with insulin sensitivity. So a leaner person is going to be more insulin sensitive, and you can reverse type 2 diabetes. You know, if you haven't gotten to the point where over the years your tail spinning towards a type 1 insulin dependent diabetes type situation. So without a doubt, exercise generally can do that. Most of the time they looked at cardiovascular exercise, but that without a doubt can be done and happens. So as far as like HIT, which is low volume, and so a lower volume program, for the average person, because I know how Juan trains, he's on my discussion board. He's posted some videos. The man's a friggin' monster.
Yes. He'll like hearing that too.
Oh, yeah. No, it's like Jordan-esque intensity.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
He goes to town, baby. Yeah. Like there's a stiff-legged deadlift. I can't remember what the weight was. It's a sizable amount of weight, and it's one of those sets where you're like this guy's going to hell. And in fact, he's going to hell with the spear to stab the devil in the heart. You know, he's like, there's no stopping him.
Yeah,
he's going in. You know, and because he just keeps going. You know, like most people wouldn't even pick the weight up given how hard it was. But he gets like 8 reps, something like that. But
nice.
So that type of effort with HIT is going to produce lots of muscle, and it's also going to produce a lot of inroads into recovery. It's going to, in of itself, the energy expenditure is pretty high, but it tends to produce an EPOC from what I've seen, training really hard, and that's going to positively affect body composition. There's something to said for training with big muscle groups like that, really, really hard, taking shit to failure, going to town.
Yeah.
Most people, the average person who's already has type 2 diabetes, is probably not going to be so inclined to train with HIT for getting good muscle gains, although they might be physiologically, genetically predisposed to gaining the best from that kind of a strategy. They're probably not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
Just guessing their lifestyle, just from the fact that they have that big marker of I like to eat and be sedentary.
Yeah.
Not necessarily everybody, but that's, what that's a predictor of type 2 diabetes. Genetics are as well. So that person's probably not going to do all that well with an HIT. Although that to answer his question, it can be done without a doubt. Someone who's in that situation would probably be better off doing whatever it is if they want to lift weights, whatever type of training style they find to be the most fun that they can maintain and keep using.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like the body composition changes will be reflected in insulin sensitivity. So as long as, if you get leaner and you stay leaner, which in of itself is a huge feat. A lot of people, they make improvements and then they revert back, a year or two later.
Sure.
Like Biggest Loser type of thing, I think. Some of those folks just go back to where they once were. But interestingly enough, a lot of the insulin sensitivity effects of exercise are very short-lived. They don't last that long. There's an acute effect, a lot of which is reversed.
Huh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but getting leaner but you're going to train, 3 times a week. So you're going to spend almost all that time with improved insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
Unless you do something crazy with your diet. So finding like a higher volume, more moderate intensity type of regime that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking like this is just, this is a toot your own horn thing, but fortitude training seems to be a really fun way to train for lots of people who like to really train pretty hard.
Yeah.
And I know this I'm thinking of like, there are a few people now that I know of. There's actually 2 gyms that I know of where they use fortitude training for their lifestyle clients.
Oh, no kidding. That's cool.
Yeah. I did a seminar at one of them in Indiana, like right after the Arnold.
Okay.
And so they have. It's funny. It was kind of fun. They've got several trainers there, and a couple of them they do 3 times a week. They use the Family Man plan, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like Mondays heavy legs, light upper body. Wednesdays heavy upper body, light legs, and then Friday is muscle rounds, full body. And they just train that way 3 times a week, and they love it. It's like, because every day is like it's like, oh God, I got the same old shit again,
Yeah.
And it's really enjoyable, and so they keep on doing that. But it's hard. These guys like to train hard too. They were a lot of fun to be with. We ran them through the ringer a little bit there at the end of the seminar I did. So they enjoyed it, and that's the main thing. I think it's funny, like initially you don't want stuff. You have to ride that line with especially people who are in this disease state who are coming in, and you're asking them, okay, so you don't have to take insulin right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're just being told by your doctor that your glucose levels are too high.
Yeah.
So that's not like putting the fear of God in you quite yet.
Right.
It's not like you're seeing like people like, just, dropping like flies around you from type 2 diabetes. But so there's no like immediate reward in going and doing something to prevent a future that, might only be a diagnosis that might only impact your future 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So first you bring someone into the gym, and you don't want to be like that butthead trainer who wants to show your client like how hard you can push people, and you just drop them. That's just like, no, that's the wrong way. They'll never want to exercise again. They'll be sore as shit probably, blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. So
you got to find something that fits within their realm of possibilities, what they can accomplish, and not feel like they've just been tortured.
Mm-hmm.
So like fortitude training would be too much.
Yeah.
Someone like, first to be confusing if they've never trained before. They're like, what the fuck are we? You could guide them through it on a day by day easily. Actually, it's not that hard to do.
No, it wouldn't be if you're right there.
These are lower rep. These are higher reps. You get them on the pump sets. You watch what they do, and then you just make up a pump set as they go along.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. Muscle rounds, you can figure that out in a couple weeks. But they'd be too hard, too much intensity.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you get them to wherever their effort level is that's maintainable. In this case, and introduce variety. So like if I think Juan's big on HIT and DC training, that kind of stuff, without a doubt, a great way to train for muscle mass. I have that built into fortitude training. So you'll have some days where like, okay, we're going to do it one day a week. We're going to do some heavy stuff for your legs. It's going to make your legs grow.
Mm-hmm.
The other days we're going to chill with the legs. We're not going to try to beat you up, but we're going to just a couple sets, big ones, and then you're done. Then you earned your bagel or whatever, you know? So, and then the rest of it, but you make it fun and keep it within those lifting parameters where they're pushed a little bit, but they know they're never going to be pushed too much.
Mm-hmm.
And then they always can lay back so they can auto-regulate based on their lifestyle or what have you. And you just find their comfort zone relative to the sports structure they have at home and with the trainers and everyone else. And then, so you do your best you can, but the main thing with something like type 2 diabetes is it's not like you fix it and you walk away. You got to find something where you can continue to keep fixing it because the insulin sensitivity will degrade and the lifestyle changes will revert.
Yeah. So
finding something that is sustainable is the name of the game ultimately. Not something that's optimal, but sustainable.
That does make sense. And then, hey, who knows down the road, if they get into that, then maybe they'll get a little bit more intense later.
It happens. Like who was I talking to? Someone like, it's when people, they quit smoking.
Okay.
It's like, there's got to be a term for this because it's the opposite of the abstinence violation effect.
Okay.
So the abstinence violation effect is you quit smoking,
mm-hmm.
and we talk about this in regards to exercise and dieting all the time. You quit smoking, and then you violated that abstinence, and then you're like, fuck it, and you just start smoking again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, it's just one cigarette. It's not like it undid the fact that you hadn't smoked for 5 months. Just one cigarette. Just get back on the wagon.
Right.
And people are like they do that. Some of this is physiological because when you're dieted down and you eat a bunch of carbs you haven't been,
mm-hmm.
your ghrelin sensitivity is really high, and the ghrelin will drive your appetite. So some of it's a physiological runaway train, but some of it's also probably in your head, and you're like, shit, you know, fuck it, I don't care. I ate a breakfast suck. This is going to be a whole cheat day, and you just go to town. I'm getting the burgers, I'm getting pizza, the whatever. But the opposite happens, and I don't know what this term is. Maybe I'll have to dig it up. But it's where, and you see this as well when people they don't want to live with sort of the cognitive dissonance of doing one very healthful health behavior,
mm-hmm.
and not doing others that are commensurate with that.
Mm.
So they stop smoking,
yeah.
and you've seen this, right? It's really you see, everyone knows someone or probably multiple people who this is. So they stop smoking, and then they become a health nut.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, they start doing everything, you know, and like they go over the deep end. Like, you know, it's like I'm eating nothing but, you know, nuts and lettuce. And,
you see that a lot in recovery. People who get
absolutely.
into alcohol and drug recovery, you know, and that gets pretty extreme, you know, at times.
Yeah, like the abstinence violence, all this is kind of drug recovery types. A lot of the behavior, I mean, not a lot of it, but some portion of the health behavior literature. Is based on, you know, people who do very unhealthy behaviors because there's good reason to study them.
Okay.
You know, it's like if you have someone who's 25 and has no, you know, immediate health concerns that's going to, you know, cause them to maybe not be around in a few months.
Yeah.
You know, because they're not an addict on the street injecting shit, that kind of thing. It's hard. You know, it's harder to get money to study those things which have long-term health outcomes. We're about in so many ways immediate. You know, tell me how it's going to help right now.
Yeah.
But so another model that's relevant, I think, is people who have pretty severe eating disorders, or they have drug addictions, or they have really aberrant behavior. Mm-hmm. And it's a model for, you know, less aberrant behavior, but it's still a model for human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be applied, I think, even if, you know, the direct studies aren't there. I think it's, you know, useful guiding information at least to figure out. So yeah, like if someone like they start doing that, and then like, well, thing I love, you know what I love best after my workouts? I go over and I get the, you know, the smoothie at whatever, Smoothie King. It's got this, that, and it's got spirulina and all the good, like, you know, super juices that are hot on the presses at the time. And they do that. So, like, that's their treat to themselves.
But look at all of us, I think. You know, I did a podcast a while ago with the guys from Cerebral Entertainment. And
oh, good.
Yeah.
I think I may have asked you. We talked about this.
Okay. Well,
maybe I sent them to you. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
They listened to BNR, Bodybuilding Nerds Radio, and then they expanded listening to advices from there, and then it kind of it grew. But one of the things we talked about, I'd been on there a few times. We did like a 3-part show about exercise, about training for people that were newer. And here's the mindset that I had with it was that I thought, okay, let's talk about training in one segment. Let's talk about diet in another segment. And then let's talk about like wrap it all together plus supplementation in the third segment. And I thought, well, what should I do first? And then I thought to myself, I feel like training is what comes first. I think what you're telling me, it's like, this is, I think everybody really, it's like you start exercising and then you start thinking to yourself like, well, shit, if I exercise, I want to eat something healthy that'll help me be better at this, and then it I think everybody who's on like the 6 meal a day plan, eating clean, didn't start doing that and then exercising. You know what I mean? Like we got healthy because we fell in love with lifting weights. Like it all goes back, I think, to the exercise first.
For us, without a doubt, there are people, I know people who have really, really very specific healthful diets, at least their opinions of what they've chosen the healthiest diet, but they don't exercise very much. It's not very often.
I've seen that. Yeah, I have seen that too. But I feel like everybody who lifts weights started with weights and then went to diet,
Yeah. It just doesn't like make any sense. It's kind of like, it's like buying a luxury vehicle and then, you just like you go through the McDonald's drive-thrus and eat your burgers and throw the wrappers on the floor. It's like, that's a friggin' Jaguar. Why do you have French fries on the floorboard? Like,
yes.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
So like, this doesn't make sense. So you kind of go in one direction. It's nice that happens, but you want to play on that and even reinforce it, I think.
Yeah.
In a way that, so it's not adding to, because there's a certain load that you do carry when you start behaviors like this. There are still barriers to action. There are still some things that can get in the way. It's like, I just really want to go to the gym today. Or I think I should, or, it's getting late or it's cold or what have you. So if then you start, adding then you set the bar for yourself that's pretty high. Mm-hmm. It's like, so, if I can't eat right, should I even be trained? Does it make any difference? You've seen this one too.
Yeah.
So like you start eating perfectly and timing and counting all your meals and you get a 6-pack bags and you're doing you completely transform, and all of a sudden like some of those things break down. And then then people will feel like, well, since I can't carry the full load of doing all those things correctly, then fuck the rest of it.
Yeah.
Then you create an abstinence. Then you build a deck of cards or house of cards for yourself. You knock one out, the whole house comes tumbling down. So the idea, I think, would be is that those other behaviors that come in after the training are reinforcing, not adding to the burden that potentially could bring the house of cards down, but rather making the training more fun and more enjoyable and integrating it all together in a way that all helps itself. So the training means I get to eat in the ways I like to eat, and when I eat well, I can train harder and I feel better.
Yeah. And
the two things reinforce one another in a positive way. So even if one thing falls away, then you're like, instead of saying, fuck it, it's like, oh man, oh my God, my diet's felt crappy and I just feel sluggish and my workouts suck. Fuck, I like to train. Fuck this. I'm going to start eating good again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You recorrect the correct balance of those things that you put together for the sort of symbiotic relationship with your lifestyle that you want to have. So that's kind of the way I think to couch it all. But if you start pushing things on someone, it won't happen that way. It has to sort of come about organically, or maybe through the guidance of a coach or trainer says, this would be a great thing to have afterwards. Oh my God, I love the strawberry shakes they have over there. And it's a great thing for you because of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway.
Let's see if we can squeeze one more in here.
All
this
right.
is from Clint Shover. And he says, what would cause RBC, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and protein to be low? Protein is down from 6.7 to 6. Hematocrit is 39. He's running test at 1,000 milligrams, and he's 6 weeks into that. I wish my hematocrit would get lower on 1,000 milligrams of test. Hell, I wish it would get lower on 500. I got to question myself. Should I up my test from 600 to 1,000 to lower my hematocrit, Scott? Because if it'll do that, I'm going to jump on that today.
I'm going to read this question. He doesn't. Clint, do you have what was your hematocrit beforehand?
39 is. He says it's down though.
No, he just, what would cause those things to be low? The protein went down. The hematocrit just gave me a value for it.
Yeah. If
And
anything,
that's 6.7 to 6. I wouldn't say that's probably especially notable. That could be within measurement error.
okay.
That's pretty. I would wait to see. I mean, the red blood cells have a life cycle that's, I think, around 90 days. People usually talk about. So
Okay.
if he were low, if he were 1,000 for 6 weeks, just about now things should be climbing up. So if he were hypogonadal and he started the gram of test a week, and because he's like, fuck it, I feel like shit, it may take some time before the hematocrit starts to raise.
Well, he said he used to be at 48 on him. Now it can't be hematocrit. It can't be 48. Oh yeah, I guess it could be 48 on hematocrit. Sure. And that would be, so he's down to 39. It dropped 9 points.
It could be he has bunk test too.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Ooh, Dr. Dean St. Martin says, happy holidays, guys.
I see that. Yeah, Dr. Dean, that would be a good question for him. I mean, I'm trying to think of any like non-genetic based. I mean, like endurance athletes can get foot strike hemolysis. Another Clint popped up where, they because they're doing so much running and the feet are pounding on the ground that they end up rupturing red blood cells that can reduce.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think that's it. He just popped up. I saw his avatar. Clint's a big dude.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
Yeah, he's a really big dude.
He looks like he's on 1,000 milligrams of test.
That's a cruise for Clint.
Yes.
Laurel, Montana. I think it's really beautiful out there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Are you stalking him right now? Is that what's going on here?
No, I see his what pops up when I hover above his avatar. Went to Laurel High School, Laurel, Montana.
Shout out to Laurel High School.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I don't know where that is, but
Laurel, Montana. Yeah, I think I've been through there, but one of my journeys. That's a good question, Clint. Man, I would chemical exposure is something possible. He works at a refinery.
Huh.
That's what it says, CHS refinery.
That's weird.
I would probably go and see the doc. Unless, it used to be 48, unless it could still be a bunk testing. So here's a situation. If Clint, and I'm not saying you were or weren't doing this, but if you were on a full-blown cycle, and some guys do this, not saying he does or doesn't, some guys cruise on a gram.
Yeah.
Literally they will, or 500 or what have you. So they take all the other extra goodies out and they run. And I've actually, not thinking back, I think of several people that have said they kind of do this thing. So they're sticking with the gram, like that's their sort of base, because they don't want to go all the way down to a true HRT. They just have come to this place that this is how they do it. So they add things on DECA or EQ or what have you on top of that, and they come back to a gram. So it could, here's a possible scenario, Clint. You don't have to confirm or deny this, but at all. But maybe if you were on something bigger than that beforehand, and then you came off and started a new kind of test, maybe that test is bunk, and you're not feeling too much as far as hematocrit goes. Because you've still got the residual effects of all the other stuff that was once in your system, and now it's starting to come out. But 39 is low, and it could. I mean, you can get hemolysis at the blood test too. That can throw things off.
Yeah,
you can get a bad phlebotomist who makes an error with the tourniquet, and that can also
retesting probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Huh?
I would definitely retest. And if you've got a doctor that takes care of you, see what he or she thinks about some other tests that you can look into, because if that's accurate, it's a big drop.
Yeah, right.
That's getting pretty low. Yeah.
And I could use to learn how you did that. So teach me your ways.
That's too much, though. You don't want to go that low.
I'll take half of that.
Clint, do you know what your hemoglobin was?
He says he did add 2. I'll go back to the doctor. I started taking iron a month ago to see if that would help. This was the second test that was low. Damn, so he's done it twice.
I would make sure you're eating like red meat sources, heme-based iron. That'll help.
Heme, yeah.
Because There's also some possibility of vitamin interference with iron uptake. So check into that.
Huh. Hey, on a related note, can I ask you your thoughts on inositol for lowering hematocrit? I started using this maybe about 6 weeks ago now, and I haven't been tested since. But from what I understand, it can lower a few points. From what Dante had said, it can be helpful to lower it maybe 2-3 points for somebody that's on TRT, but for somebody on cycle, that's not going to be like a massive drop. Do you have any thing to add to that?
Yeah, is it IP6 inositol 6-phosphate?
Yes.
Or
yes.
Yeah. So it's a iron chelating supplement. So what it basically does is prevents iron absorption.
Okay.
So the idea, as far as I understand, like it's a pretty simple thing. You're just depriving your body of iron as essential material for producing heme in the red blood cells. So you're basically just saying, you don't want to make the bricks that are your red blood cells. Well, we're not going to provide the cement that's needed to make those bricks. Just like the heme being analogous to this, or the iron being analogous to the cement. When you've got a badass supercharged brick making machine in place, when you're super supplementing, it may not fucking matter. It's like they can make bricks no matter what. We'll figure out a way.
I'm really good at making bricks.
Yeah, you're too high. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing though. There's synergy and the potential that things can be somewhat additive too. So that I don't think it's going to hurt you unless you like end up being iron deficient.
Yeah. So
like, check your ferritin and that kind of thing. Make sure your iron status is good in the blood.
Okay.
But if you do some of the other things that you may have in mind, like donating that kind of stuff, then it'll mean you just got pull from the various possibilities and use them all in reasonable amounts, Yeah. So, but I wouldn't like start, pouring a half a cup of IP6 into your breakfast coffee.
Got it right now, actually, right here.
Oh, there you go. Oh, there you go. Nice.
All right, we're about out of time here. It's good to see you again, Scott. It's been a little while.
Yeah, likewise, man. I'm so glad I'm back on Facebook again. I was just jonesing for Facebook. No, I was glad. It's nice to see people. It's funny. I added requested probably 100 people today. I just went on there and just started, clicking all the ones. And so there wasn't any, if you didn't get added, it's just because I just went through the list that it suggested to me.
Right.
I added the people that I recognized essentially.
Were you able to get a profile picture up yet?
I did. I think so. When I went to go on my phone, it kept on referring me back to the hackers email. Yeah. So I'm like, fuck this. So because I'd taken Facebook off my phone and I was doing some other things. I'm like, I got to load Facebook on, log on. And I don't know that my, because what I did, because Facebook, I'm going to just leave Facebook out as I just use the Mac suggested strong password, which is a series of dashes and gobbledygook
that you'll never remember. You have
that I don't plan on remembering, and I don't want to remember. Yeah. And that way there's no password in there that I'm going to use anywhere else that anyone can make use of. So I'm going to start using those for because I get up. You said you register at places all the time. Yeah. Just for getting packages, you might order one thing, and I'm going to start using those generic passwords because if I don't have a membership at some place I ordered something from 2 years ago, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, so it took me a while to get on there, and then I did add a picture.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, and I did it through my phone. I just whatever. I just want to because people were like, "Who the hell is this?" There's no profile picture. That's obviously fake account.
Right, exactly.
You and me, yeah, and it just wouldn't load it for people who are wondering why Scott's asking. It wouldn't load. I made the account, and then I click upload, and it would just spin. Yeah. So Facebook, I don't know what the deal is.
I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Do you plan to make any New Year's resolutions?
The thought had not crossed my mind one time, actually.
No.
No. Well, because I'm constantly in a state of trying to re-engineer my worldview and my perspective on life to make it as rewarding and growth promoting and creative and authentic and loving as I possibly can. That's my daily grind
Yeah.
is to give expression to a better version of me.
Yeah.
In any way I can. So, I mean, I could maybe come up with one that's sort of like, sort of a long-term plan, because it's nice to make plans and like commit yourself to something. But
Yeah.
that's a really good question. I mean, I have all sorts of things I want to have happen that I could talk about, but that would take us way off track.
Okay. I was just wondering. I try to make a few every year, but I don't just do it like by New Year's and New Year's Day. I set this, but I am making a list of things that I want to do. One of them is build a website for my coaching, because I've never built a website for my coaching. It's simple, but I do a lot of other stuff, and I've always just put it off, and I've never needed to. Just, word of mouth referrals and stuff have worked out great, but I think I should, I want to have a website. So keep it simple, something easy to a splash page of sorts,
If you, it's very easy to do. It may even be part of whoever you have hosts, whatever ISP you use. I use MyBB. It's an open source bulletin board, like vBulletin.
Oh yeah.
And I can give you access to mine. You can check out. It's basically fully functional. It does everything that the MyBB, which costs like $800 or $1,000 a year, does, but it's free.
Okay.
And you can download that. Here's how I do my online clients. And I stole this from Ken Hill.
Okay.
100%, because it works great. So you have your open board, your forum. People can ask questions, and for what it's worth, I have free Q&A like every day on my discussion board for anyone who bought the Fortitude training book.
Yeah.
Buy the book. If you happen to read the email that you get with the purchase, it tells you this. People just don't take advantage of it for whatever reason. So there's a discussion board with all the forums and all the kind, like Intense Muscle, Professional Muscle, all the devices forum, and then I have a totally invisible forum unless you are a client.
Yeah.
And when I do my intake, they fill out a form, and it launches a thread in that forum that only that person, my client, and myself can see.
That is cool. Yeah. Skip's told me about his.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm an admin over at Intense Muscle just because I help out when shit hits the fan. I go in there and have to figure out how to fix it, Yeah. Just because I like to do that,
Yeah.
That's, giving back to Ken whenever I can. But I see, like, he's got tons of people back there.
Yeah.
So no one else sees that. You go to that forum, the client's forum, as a client, all you see is your thread.
Right.
And whatever stickies are there. But I see all the threads. And you can get notifications, just like you can, all that kind of stuff. So you don't, like, if they message you, you get a notification on your phone and your email. You go and you check it, you respond. You can post your pictures. It's all there. Then you can go back and look. Like Jordan, for instance, at one point in time when we worked together there, he told me, like, this was maybe a year ago, that he went back and looked at one of our times working together. It was like 3 years previous to that.
No kidding. That's cool.
Yeah, because it still has access to it. Yeah, so it was very cool. Yeah. And he was like, man, I saw some things that I hadn't been doing that I should be doing now. And like, he did this all on his own,
Yeah.
Jordan's always, trying to make himself better. And he's like, yeah, and that was a phenomenal prep. It was just so amazing. Like, he now, as having coached as many people as he has, he was able to look back on that and reflect on, like, that was like we just worked that perfectly.
Right. It's funny that, like, down the road you can see that, but you don't always see that when you're newer.
Right. Yeah. That, and down the road that you can literally see that, like, you can go back and look at it.
That is cool.
As long as the board's up. Otherwise, those emails get lost, or you change your email, or if I used to use an encrypted email.
Okay.
And like, you have so much storage space, and then like you have to go back and sometimes, like, well, let's put those, those emails and store them away. So you have to reopen them, unarchive them, and that kind of shit. This is nice. It's all right there, and it's unlimited if you have the right account. It's unlimited. So I'll help you set that up. I'd set up one for Dave Henry's page where he coaches people.
Okay. Yeah. I'd love to talk to you about that more.
Yeah. And anyone else, like, just people know that it's a very simple way to do it. MyBB. So public service announcement.
Speaking of websites, go over to fortitudetraining.net as well as byobbcoach.com. And thanks for watching, guys. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you haven't subscribed, we'd love to have you over at the YouTube page. A bunch of podcasts coming out each week. Scott, as always, man, it's been a pleasure.
Yes. Happy New Year. Do something fun, safe, and something maybe you've never done before. And let us know what it is if you so choose.